name's Becca Maree. My pronouns are she, they, and I am currently the head librarian for the Zine Library in the Independent Media Center. I've been involved with the Zine Library in particular for 2 years. I started volunteering here with Catherine LaBarre, who was the former head librarian, right when I started my program at the iSchool on campus, which is the Library and Information Program. And ever since then, I've just fell in love with the space, and I was really happy that the opportunity presented itself for me to kind of step up and continue the legacy that Catherine and the other librarians who came before her started in the space. So that's kind of where I am right now. So I also began volunteering with Books to Prisoners 2 years ago when I first moved to the community, because someone in the Library and Information Science program had spoken about the program at one of my orientation meetings, and I was just like, this is a great program, I'd love to be involved, how can I do this? So 2 years ago I went in to the satellite jail down in Urbana and got my security clearance, and I've been a librarian hosting library sessions in that space for 2 years now. The way that I see that experience for me and the experience with the Zine Library kind of coalescing together is that I've always been particularly very interested in participatory media and also the shifting of narratives from individuals who may not have a lot of say in public media. And so one of my research projects when I was in the Library and Information Science program was on incarcerated women and the zines that they were creating, because there's a rich history with Vicky Law and Tenacious, Anthony Rayson doing work with the South Chicago ABC Zine distro with incarcerated individuals, and I really wanted to highlight the importance of these shifting narratives in my work, and I find that both of these experiences for me have really given me a sense of how the people in our community also have that power to create narratives. Before the before the pandemic began, I was actually going to propose that we do a zine workshop at the local jails. Of course, we haven't been able to implement that since because of all of the issues with COVID-19, but I'm hoping that in the future we can bring these two spaces together in that way and really highlight the voices there. I know that Books to Prisoners has also put out 2 zines from the letters that they collect from incarcerated individuals across the United States. So I'd really like to see that happen in our community, specifically with people from here. Naturally, most people in the community know Books to Prisoners for their letter writing program, which is similar to a lot of other Books to Prisoners programs across the nation. However, I'm not clear on the date at when we started this, but the UC Books to Prisoners has actually implemented 2 on-site libraries in the 2 jails locally here in Champaign-Urbana. And so how we work with that is the donations that we receive for letter writing, we also will go through that collection and pull books for our collections in the 2 jail libraries here. And so we've been partnering with jail officials for a few years now in having these programs run. So what that looks like is every Monday night and Tuesday night and Friday mornings, volunteers who work with Books to Prisoners and who have gotten the security clearance from the jails will go in and serve the patrons in those jails in our library sessions. They look a little different right now because of COVID-19, so we've had to kind of step back with how many hours we were providing this service. But yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing, and it's very exciting. And it's also led to other programs with volunteers. I know we've got some movie night volunteer sessions that people who work with Books to Prisoners have established. However, those are not affiliated. It's just that people who were involved in the program saw a need and then expanded into doing these other volunteer sessions there. So it's been a really rich volunteer experience, I think, in my opinion. So I can't speak too much to first followers because I haven't been actively engaged, but I know the Bailout Coalition has done a lot of work with our court watching program. I believe that those two are affiliated, but I don't want to misspeak in that sense. But I know there's a group of long-running volunteers in the community that have been doing court watching. A lot of individuals, long-running, like activists in the community who've been here for many, many years that have been doing court watching for people who are incarcerated in our local jails here. And those two programs work hand in hand. I know I want to give a shout out to Barbara Kessel because she's been very, very active in not only like the movie groups at the local jails, but she also does the court watching, which is how I got involved with her. And she works with the Bailout Coalition as well. And we were able to bring a speaker, Rebecca Buchanan, about like a year ago, who was able to speak about prisons in Norway, yes, prisons in Norway, and how they differ significantly from the United States prisons, and how we can start looking forward into like how we can work on our abolition projects here in Champaign-Urbana to make things a lot better for people here in the community. So our collection has been around since the early 2000s, and it's still running in 2020, which is amazing. And everything that you see behind me, including the books and the zines, have all been donations. So no one is like going out of their way. Like, we don't have a budget to buy zines, which is one thing that I would love to have. But you know, it's great to see that the community in Champaign-Urbana, but also in the United States, have come together to really supplement our collection. Usually what we're looking for is a lot of zines, which are personal zines. I like to call those like the diary of the zines because it's whatever the author wants to write down. So a lot of our collection is zines, and I love to see that because we get a glimpse into like the life of our community members here, but also other individuals across the United States. So we're always looking for stuff like that. I think more recently we would love to see more zines on like abolition and like anti-racist zines as well, because there are many working groups across our community that are wanting to see those narratives and wanting to see that media produced. And so I think that the zine library could really benefit from having those in the collection as well. So if you ever want to donate, feel free to mail them into us at the IMC. I'm sure that the address will be linked down below. Usually we used to, when we had more open hours here in the building as a whole, people could come and drop off their donations in a little mailbox that we have right at the corner of the zine library. Unfortunately, that hasn't been as popular because not a lot of footwork is coming through the building currently. But yeah, these are the ways that you can donate anything you have. Yeah, we're always looking for more to add, especially things locally, to really build up our archive of local materials, because local history and local narratives are always very, very important. For the zine library in particular, I, as the head librarian, try to come in every Thursday from like 10 to 1, and if anyone wants to come in and help me with the collection by either like shelf reading, I don't know how else to say that, just making sure that everything's kind of in order, and also cataloging. People can get into contact with me and let me know that they want to come by on those hours. However, beyond that, we also have open hours on every first and third Sunday of each month from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And so that's when the red doors at the front of the IMC are open. Anyone can come in to browse the collection, to donate, to volunteer. That's really when we want people to come in. Also, we have 2 public computers that people can come in and use during those open hours as well. So we really like to highlight that we have more than just the zines as well. We want this to be more of like a public space for individuals to come in and feel like they're in a public library almost, and see like all of the stuff that we have from our community. So before pandemic times, the zine library did do a lot of events, especially with the iSchool on campus, because we want the library students who are moving into this profession to see that something like this exists, and this is something that could be very meaningful for them and also their careers, because it's unlike any library you've ever been in, which I think is wonderful. We've also done a host of events with like the CU, like downtown Urbana Get Down. We would have like a table set up where kids and their families could come and make zines, and that was always really magical because you got to see children making these narratives about whatever they want. We saw a really cute one with a mom and her son where she made a zine called Me and My Spooky Son, and it was just really nice. The Zine Library has also been heavily involved with CU Girls Rock, which is the event that brings young girls in for a week-long event where they're learning musical instruments, they're learning how to put a band together, and we were able to come in and also teach them about zines and the history of zines in like the music community, and so that was always really, really wonderful as well. I'm really looking forward to when we can do events like that again, because it's all about community and we love that. So I am a recent grad with my MSLIS. I graduated in May and was thrown out into the world, a librarian waiting to see what would happen. Besides my work with Books to Prisoners in the Zine Library, I'm also the administrative assistant with the Graduate Employees Organization on the the campus, and I do a lot of like information management work with them, and also work with like their working groups. And I really in the future want to see the Zine Library being involved in some of the stuff that we're doing with GEO as well. I know there's been talk about hosting like a zine info session with the Defund UIPD working group, where we can show GEO members but also community members all of our abolition zines, and also have them work on their own zines about policing in the Urbana-Champaign community and like abolition projects here as well. So I really want to see that happening in the future. We've been talking about it, we don't know when it'll happen yet, but I do like that those two things will be coming together. As for how I got involved with these two working groups in the IMC, I actually started with Books to Prisoners because I had learned about them from someone at the iSchool. And while I started working in those libraries, I really started thinking more about the narratives that people could create while being incarcerated, and how meaningful like their words and their thoughts and their feelings and everything are. And so that's when I started reading a lot more into like incarcerated people's zines and like the prison zine distro, and like all of the amazing things that like Anthony Raisin, Vicky Law are doing with incarcerated individuals. And that's when I came to the Zine Library. Now, I had heard about the Zine Library before from an orientation, but it was really when I started my own research project that I started spending way more time in the space, and like actually using the zines that we have in our collection for my research project, and like really engaging with those materials in the way that they should be engaged with, you know, highlighting that these are words that are being said and these are things that need to be uplifted and said. And so that's kind of like what brought me to both of them together. It was kind of like a roundabout way of all of my interests in one, and then started working closely with Catherine, and now I am like the key holder of the space. And yeah, it's very fascinating to see how collaborative the spaces are in the IMC, and how one person will be doing a lot of great work in a working group, and then when they pass it along to someone new, that person will do work and carry it on for the next person who comes. And that's been something that's been really cool for me in these experiences. Pandemic times obviously make it so much harder to organize individuals and volunteering in the space. And so I've really moved to having a more digital presence for the Zine Library. We did have a Facebook page, but I've since made a Twitter page as well for other individuals to like engage with. And I like to highlight certain pieces of the collection on that Twitter to be like, hey, today's Thursday, look at what we got in the mail, isn't this cool? I've also been working very closely with people who want to catalog and kind of make an inventory of the collection, because that's kind of what we can do right now since we're not having many events. And that's been really cool because I've gotten community members, but also like prospective library students to come in and share their skills with just making an inventory. I like to show them that this experience is going to be very different from any other cataloging experience that they've ever had, and that with zines, because of how they're constructed, sometimes you're not going to get information that you normally would in like an inventory, like, when was this published? I don't know. And I'm like, you can leave that blank. We just want to have something that a community member can come in and say, oh, I want to know what's in like the farm and food collection. They can look online on one of our computers or on their personal laptops and see what we have already before coming in. And I think that also makes the collection a little bit more browsable for pandemic times. Because, you know, we're becoming acutely aware of how much we touch things. And so this space has always been built on like, you come in and you flip through, and it's very nice. But now we've kind of had to move away from that a little bit. So we're trying to make it a little bit more accessible in a digital space. Normally with zines, because of how they're constructed, we're not wanting to do like a digitization project or whatnot because of like the code of ethics around housing zines. Not everyone wants to have their zines available online. So playing with that tension, I've been more instead like making the volunteer opportunities available on the digital space. So like cataloging online, taking a box of zines home with you and piecing through them at home to catalog, and then having that catalog and inventory available for community members to see what we have since the space isn't open currently. And also probably putting in place in time for people to schedule times with me when, after looking at the catalog inventory, they would like to come in and then view the zines. Because as I was saying, you know, we've all become very acutely aware of how much we're spending time in a space, how much we're touching things, and how that can be problematic right now. And so just really making sure that everything that we have is accessible in a format where people do not feel unsafe having to browse through zines and touch everything that's been touched by individuals, me primarily, and other people who come in. So just really, really moving us onto a more online space in a way that still stays true to like the ethics of zine making and making sure that things aren't publicized that shouldn't be publicized, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.